This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret phrase is Vantablack.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. I am very excited about today's show. We have Rachel A. Rosen. Rachel is a writer, graphic designer, podcaster, activist, and educator from Toronto. She's the author of Cascade, the first book in the Sleep of Reason trilogy, the co-author of the Sad Bastard Cookbook, Food You Can Make So You Don't Die, as well as a bunch of earnestly political short stories that you can find floating around various anthologies. She's co-host of the new podcast Wizards and Spaceships. Once in third grade, having tragically misunderstood what Spirit Days were about, she brought a Ouija board to class, and I can imagine that went well.
I made so many friends.
Oh, yes, that's awesome. I may have to recommend that to some students, because we still do Spirit Days where it's like everybody wear pajamas today. Spirit Days, somebody brought the Ouija board. That
I actually suggested that to my students and they thought it was a really cool idea. And
right? Yeah. I'm sure you'd have some parent complain. Some parent would go, this is, objectionable in some way. So as the YouTube viewers can see, we always come dressed to the nines for this show. We always dress up. What did you choose to wear? Tell the podcast folks about this costume.
My other gig is as a graphic designer, and I don't know if you've heard this, but Adobe's decided to put its entire client base out of business by embracing AI, so they don't need us anymore. So I figured if you can't beat them, join them. And so I'm dressed as a horrifying AI generated image, kind of thing you'd find on Midjourney. So I've got some extra fingers, my glasses are dissolving into my hair, my buttons just don't correspond to anything, and just like arms are way too long.
Yes, multiple mouths. It's terrifying. That is, yes, that move by Adobe is. I don't understand how they thought that was a good business decision to say we own everything that is created on here and we can use it to create AI. Like, I got tons of folks who are saying, forget it, I can never use Adobe anymore because it will steal all my stuff.
That's what we're all seeing. It's what we're all wrestling with.
Yeah.
So,
I use a GIMP, graphic image manipulation program, which is but most of the functionality of Adobe, and it's free and it does not steal my stuff. So I have been very, very pleased with that. And that was just lucky. That was, I'd never invested in Adobe and I was like, phew.
dodged a bullet.
Yes, open source, folks, GIMP. I have been really excited to have you on because you've got the second book in your series coming out. So tell everybody about this.
My first book is called Cascade, and it came out in 2022 because time is a flat circle post-COVID. That feels like it was about 6 months ago.
Right.
The manuscript's actually done and it is now sitting with the publisher. The publisher is currently on the road, but hopefully he likes it. So I don't have a release date yet for it. I do have a title, which is Blight. The first book took me 7 years to write and publish, and I'm hoping that this one can make it in under 2.5. So by the time I hit the third book, I'm just going to be unstoppable.
Yes. And for folks out there, what is Cascade about, and where does Blight take that story?
Yeah, so Cascade is an urban fantasy novel set in the thrilling world of Canadian politics. It's kind of like a House of Cards with chaos magic, and it's set in the wake of a climate disaster that brings magic back to the world, and the characters are all struggling with how to make the apocalypse not worse. So,
yeah. Oh, that sounds awesome. And then Blight is It hasn't all been resolved and dealing with that.
No, I felt really badly because Cascade ends on a really horrible cliffhanger. And I said on the cover it's book one and it's a trilogy. So, a lot of people sent me hate mail after the first one. And I hope they're a little bit relieved to hear that the second one is on its way.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's not a bad turnaround time. A couple of years. I have authors who are like, if I don't get my book out in the next year, is it going to be a problem? And I'm like, I've waited, more than 10 years for a sequel. It's okay. People will still, purchase it. They will be looking forward to it. But yeah, 2 years, you're in good shape there. So that'll be about four at the far end. And that'll be fine. But yeah, I just finished the third in a trilogy, and it's
Oh, congrats.
well, but it's just a manuscript. Still have the editing phase to go. So I've got still, a lot of work left to do. But getting to the end of a trilogy was pretty cool.
I imagine it's going to be really satisfying. I've actually just started mapping out the third a couple days ago, so at least I know what happens if I die.
Yes, yes,
There's
somebody could pick it up.
an outline around now.
Yes, exactly. So now that the second one is done, you've got time for distractions. This is a show about procrastination. You and I both know, a lot of writing is balancing our time and dealing with that. What's been something that has been pulling you away from your work lately in terms of pop culture?
Oh, in terms of pop culture, all kinds of things. I just finished watching the latest season of We Are Lady Parts. I'm not sure if you've ever.
I have not. What's it about?
So this is a BBC.
Oh, and I lost your sound. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, so let's go back to just where you just introduced lady parts, and then
Yeah.
let me turn off my Wi-Fi on my phone, see if that helps. Maybe that might have been on my end. Okay, I'll ask, so
Yeah.
what have you been what's been pulling you away from your work in terms of pop culture lately?
I've been watching a lot of TV. So I just finished binging the latest season of We Are Lady Parts. Have you ever heard of that one?
No, what's it about?
Okay, this is a fantastic show. It's a BBC Four, and it was never released on any of the streams as far as I can tell. But it's about a group of Muslim women who start a punk band, and
I've heard of this. I've heard people rave about this. Yes.
it is so funny. It's really well done. It's political without being didactic. It's like, girl power, and it's like oddly touching. So one of the things that I've been into lately, because my own writing tends to be really big stories, really high stakes. And I like to watch that stuff too, but lately I've been really into these really small stakes stories. So, the first season revolves around, are they going to get into Battle of the Bands? The second season revolves around, well, are they going to get a record contract? And how's that going to go for them? And I just love these shows where there's just this very, very small problem that stands in for, a massive societal problem. And you end up caring just as much about, is this band going to get signed? Is this restaurant going to get off the ground? As much as you would care about, is the entire galaxy going to explode?
Yeah. Yeah, it's something I struggle with my own writing. I like looking back, I'm like, oh, they saved the world. They saved the world. The stakes are too high. And the parts that actually matter to readers don't end up being, do they save the world? It's the intimate relationship stuff that matters. So yeah, I enjoy that too. And it's something that I'm trying to learn from as a reader of all kinds of stories and film and that kind of thing. How do you make the small stakes matter more? Because that is it is great to have that kind of focus. So what else has been pulling you away from your work?
So another thing, I gotta go very cutting edge pop culture here, but I'm reading Moby Dick for the first time. Very timely and relevant.
That's right. That's right.
So there's a thing called Whale Weekly. And this was started after Dracula Daily. So they send somebody who has way more time on their hands than I do, has figured out the time gaps between each chapter of Moby Dick. And so they send you a chapter or sometimes two chapters as it would happen in the novel. So
That's cool.
yeah, so you're reading this over the course of, a 2 or 3 year long whaling mission. And I absolutely love it. I have heard so many horror stories about people being forced to read it in ninth grade and they found it so boring. I'm like, how? This is such a great book. We don't make books like this anymore. It's fantastic.
Well, and part of it is that slow burn at the beginning would never get it published. Like,
Oh, no.
the whole that's what's keeps people out of it. Once you get into it, it's great. But yeah, you gotta get them. They had time back then to go, I'm not distracted by Netflix. I can take the time to get into this massive tome of a book. But yeah, that's great. So is that service free or do you have to pay?
Oh, it's free.
That's cool. Somebody just chopped it up and went, well, it's fair use. I can create a subscription. That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
And there's a lot of discussion groups on Tumblr. It's about all I do on Tumblr these days is I go on and I look at the Whale Weekly tag and people will quote it or they'll make fan art or they'll go into really deep analysis of the themes. This is how it should be read.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. That's you are taking essentially you're auditing a very high level class about Moby Dick,
Exactly.
instead not paying graduate credit expenses for it. That's brilliant.
And very, very slowly.
Yeah, which is nice. That's again, it's turning it into a cozy. That's great. So what else has been pulling you away?
Well, I spend way too much time on Discord, which I think is maybe the least toxic social media space. So I'm on a lot of writing servers. I'm on a couple music and TV servers as well, but it's mainly writing servers. And I have this theory that eventually every server just sort of devolves into memes and peer support. And
But
I'm
still better. Like you're right, it is peer support and fun instead of, hey, let's be awful to one another. I have really somebody convinced me I needed to get into CIFA just because of the Discord group, and it has been wonderful.
the CIFA Discord group is amazing.
So rich. There's so many different groups there that are supporting one another, and yeah, so I was like, I got into CIFA so that I can participate here.
I know. When I got into CIFA, I was so thrilled. I feel like an author now. I have sold enough books. I'm serious. My books are in libraries, and I can join the Discord server.
Yep. We should be spreading the word, hey folks, if you want to take your career to the next level in terms of emotional support,
Yes.
what is the way to go. Oh, that's very cool.
Pictures of everybody's garden. It's just great.
Yeah, and sci-fi poetry. I mean, they've got anime. They've got stuff about whatever's your area of interest within the science fiction community. These creators are there, and you're interacting with people who are incredibly accomplished, which just it helps my imposter syndrome to go. These people are talking to me. It's pretty cool. So what about in the news? What's been pulling you away?
Well, this is a week-old news story, but I love it. So Stuart Semple has changed his name to Anish Kapoor, and your publishing company is named NotAPipe. So I'm gonna guess that you have some background in art history.
Yes, but I don't know Stuart Semple.
Okay, well, I'm gonna start telling you this story, and then you're gonna be like, "Oh, that's the guy." This is the second greatest art feud of all time, after the Caravaggio-Baglioni feud, it's even older. So this goes back to 2015 when Vantablack, the darkest shade of black, was invented, and Anish Kapoor bought exclusive rights to use it. So Stuart Semple did not like that. He was a much less well-established artist. His big thing is colors and pigment, and he makes a living selling his art, but his primary source of income, as far as I can tell, is creating his own pigments. So he developed a color called Pink is Pink, and he licensed it for anybody in the world to use except for Anish Kapoor. And so when you go to buy this, as I have, I've actually got, unfortunately the audio people can't hear, but I have a little jar of Pink is Pink. So when you go to buy it on a site, you have to sign a waiver saying that you are not Anish Kapoor and you're not going to give it to him and you have no association with him. And so he's been doing this, trying to convince Anish Kapoor to share the Vantablack with all other artists. So last week, his latest, and this feud's been going on for years and years on Instagram primarily, where they get a hold of each other's colors and like send each other rude gestures. It's great. It's very funny. It's very dramatic. Yeah, so last month actually, Stuart Semple changed his name to Anish Kapoor in the hopes that this would allow him finally to have access to Vantablack. Legally, he has posted the name change certificates, and I get emails from him, and it's now coming from Anish Kapoor, which was very confusing.
That's wild.
And we're still waiting for Anish Kapoor to respond, because he does generally tend to give some funny responses. But he, as far as I know, he hasn't yet.
So does this mean that Stuart Semple can no longer use his pink?
You know what? I don't think he considered the implications of that.
That would be hilarious. He's like, nobody can use this pink. Everybody can use it except Anish Kapoor. Also, I'm going to change my name to Anish Kapoor. Oh, yeah. Shoot. Now he cannot use his own pink. Oh, that is amazing. I mean, I'm sure there are people who've been tracking this whole thing. So I will look for a good,
I have a PowerPoint on it.
Would you be willing to put a link to it in the show notes for the show?
I will host it somewhere public. Yes. I use it in my classroom, and the kids don't find this as funny as I do. I find it hilarious. There's a slide of me and a friend dressed up as them for Halloween.
That is amazing. I love this. Yes, let's figure out a way to share that with the world, or get you onto some like conference, to do something about it, and then we can post a link to that, because that's amazing. That's so cool. What a great story.
Yeah, during lockdown, actually, one of the things that I did was I hosted PowerPoint parties. So people would come and they would choose any topic, whatever their special interest was, whatever they were really geeky about. And they would do a 5-minute presentation about it. And this started out as mine and then became a lesson in my art history class.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, that is so great. So when you're not writing, I'm getting a sense of, the fact that you have a lot of other things going on in terms of your career. But what else do you like to do when you're not writing?
So I design covers. That's probably I don't know if it's a hobby, because I probably make more money doing that than I do writing books.
Yep.
But so I do serious ones for pay, and then I do book covers that are for famous books but in the wrong genre. So I did what did I do? I did like The Very Hungry Caterpillar as a horror recently. I did Robert's Rules of Order as like a 50s men's pulp fiction kind of thing.
Yes, a noir Robert's Rules of Order. Oh, I love it.
That so is like brilliant. Yeah, I paint, I do beading, I play tabletop role-playing games. I've got a Star Trek game that's been running for 5 years that I play with a couple of my friends.
Yeah, how many folks are involved in that one?
I think there's 5 of us.
Yeah. Just being able to schedule 5 people to play a game for 5 years is an achievement in and of itself. That's amazing.
In 3 different countries.
Yeah. So it's all online. It's all, Zoom.
Yeah, it's been on Jitsi before the lockdown started. So I was kind of able to slide a little bit more into the the Zoom world.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So I've never done a Star Trek role-playing game. How are you moving between planets, or are you on a single ship, or what is the over the course of 5 years, both?
Yeah, all of the above. We're on a ship. We're kind of connected to a station at the edge of explored space, And we're kind of going on these missions and making first contact and sometimes avoiding first contact and sometimes getting into conflicts. Sometimes just hanging out at the station talking about our feelings.
Yeah. Do you have to, how much is supplied and how much do you have to come up with all of the various creatures yourself? Because I mean, it offers Star Trek universe offers a lot of flexibility, but you've got to invent a lot of material too, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, there's a rule book and there's expansions, but I have a GM who's just this incredibly imaginative person and a really great improviser. So I'm pretty sure a lot of the stuff is coming out of his head.
That is really impressive. And then you podcast as well. How's
I
that
do
been going?
podcast. Yeah, it's pretty new. We just dropped our second episode last month. We've got our third one coming up this month. It's called Wizards and Spaceships, and I co-host it with a poet named David L. Klink, and it's about wizards and spaceships.
Yeah. And so are you
Yeah.
covering their representation in, Wizards and Spaceships in, any kind of media, or are you kind of focusing, or how's that been going?
Yeah, so we're looking at genre fiction really broadly. He's coming from a genre poetry perspective, which is something that I'm pretty new to. I didn't realize that it was as much of a thing as it is, and I'm, fantasy novelist, sci-fi short stories. So we started out. He's actually my neighbor, and when we started hanging out, we were always, drinking in my backyard, and we would be talking about what we were reading, what we were watching, and just trading recommendations back and forth. And at some point, because he does another podcast, he said, we need to record these conversations.
Yeah.
Because I think he was getting just this really, really long list on his phone of all of these things that he's probably never going to read that I insisted were the greatest book.
Right.
He needed to see it. So, it's about that. And it's about, we make some terrible dad jokes and puns. And we have that weird thing where you can be this sci-fi, fantasy, or horror fan, but then your tastes don't overlap at all with other people who are also very much sci-fi, horror, fantasy fans. So, yeah, it makes it really interesting. We've got a little bit of a generation gap and differing tastes, and so just kind of where those overlaps and where those gaps are in terms of the genres as a whole.
Yeah, well, and that's nice for the listeners because they're going, okay, that one does sound interesting to me. Oh, that one sounds interesting to me. And, so your differences are a service to the listeners. That's beneficial.
That's the hope. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so in addition to, I mean, you've got all this stuff going on, but a lot of it's Zoom and podcast and stuff. What are you doing when you're getting out of the house?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this all kind of makes me sound like a bit of a homebody, which maybe I am because teaching tends to leave me psychically drained. But I go to a lot of protests. There's a lot wrong with the world, and I write political fiction, so that's where I get a lot of my inspiration to begin with. I don't know if getting involved in politics counts as a hobby. It kind of is.
I mean, yeah, or the inverse. I think when people think they are not being political, they're not doing themselves any favors. It should be pretty intrinsic to our lives. The people who are avoiding politics, I worry. Like it's not but the other thing is, protesting. I do a lot of protesting myself, and it's good for us too. Like the act of going out there and standing up for something forces you to reflect on that thing in a really helpful, I think, healthy way. I feel like I have learned a lot about myself from both protesting and the way I am perceived, cishet straight white guy out, holding up a sign that says Black Lives Matter. The feedback I get, it's like, oh, how I respond to that teaches me a lot about me. And so I encourage folks out there, find a cause you care about and get out there and hold up a sign for a while, and you'll learn a lot about your community and yourself. It's really good for you.
Show up. People will welcome you. People will start talking to you. And if you're like me and you track your steps, you'll get a lot of steps in.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of steps. Yes. That's great. Well, so you already know the world of D&D, that kind of thing, the tabletop role-playing games. But if you, Rachel Rosen, yourself were a character in a D&D fantasy world, what would be your race and class?
So I made a little bit of an effort to crowdsource this with the people that I play with. And it was funny because they came up with the same thing that I did roughly. And that's a Tabaxi Bard Paladin multi-class following the Oath of the Revolution with a chaotic good alignment. So it's kind of a running theme with me and the people that I play with that I'm absolutely incapable of playing a normal D&D character ever. Like, I just find the most ridiculous thing that I can play in the setting. And then I play that. My friend was running an Icewind Dale campaign, which is just this, serious, grim, dark survival horror in the frozen north. And I'm like, can I be a puffin, Aarakocra? She's like, no.
Yeah, no, that takes away the challenge. So what do you think that, Bard, totally get it. Paladin, you're out protesting.
Mhm.
Why the Tabaxi? And what does that say about you?
Just because I am a massive cat person. I don't know if you could hear my little one screaming in the back there, but yeah, no, my life is cats. I love them.
Yeah, well, and you'd have to be in the chaotic alignment if you're a cat.
Yeah.
An order cat wouldn't make any sense.
No.
So, oh, that's excellent. Okay, so you're ambushed. You're
Mhm.
walking through the woods. You're ambushed by 3 level 1 goblins. You are a Tabaxi Paladin Bard multi-class. What do?
I attempt to convert them to my cause.
Excellent. And magically, charm, or do you just try and talk them into it?
I'm going to do the charisma offensive. And
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. And then if that doesn't work,
vicious mockery. The greatest cantrip to ever be invented.
What are the effects of vicious mockery? I don't remember.
It makes your opponent take psychic damage because you hurt their feelings.
That's so great.
I love that this is in the game, and it's not even a special. You get that when you take Bard as your class.
Yeah.
It's
Vicious mockery. That's
a cantrip, so you can use it as often as you like.
Yes. That's so great. Oh, that's excellent. Okay, well, we're going to go to our ad break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately. Special announcement time. NotAPipePublishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, this show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone: 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60 second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run 1 or 2 of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
Cold Rising. Algo and their team of enforcers take on the underbelly of Geneva megacity before being sent on a mission to Mars, a cesspit of corporate exploitation. Suong, a child laborer, must turn the heart of Agent Algo while the fate of Mars, her friends, and her family hang in the balance. Cold Rising. Cold Rush novella, available now on Amazon.
In 1883, the famous German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche put forth the idea of the Übermensch, the Superman. In my latest novel, Project Übermensch, Geoffrey Cannon is either a modern-day messiah or the product of a military experiment gone awry. Either way, the young, inspirational guru has mad powers and metaphysical skills. But Geoffrey's life as spiritual healer and speaker takes a dark turn when some devotees, young women he's had brief affairs with, are inexplicably murdered under grisly circumstances, and rumors of Bigfoot and Sasquatch abound. Amazon is the best place to find my books. That's Lonnie Busch, Busch with a C like the beer. I hope you'll check them out.
No one wants to live in a country ruled by wizards, unless the alternative is worse. Peter Watts, author of Blindside, says, a near-perfect blend of implacable horror, gallows humor, and ecological apocalypse. Nick Namadas, author of The Second Shooter, says, relentlessly radical and often hilarious. Cascade, Book 1 in the Sleep of Reason trilogy, by Rachel A. Rosen. Available now at bookshop.org, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and at bppress.ca.
So welcome back, everyone. I'm here with Rachel Rosen. Rachel, what have you been daydreaming about lately?
Well, I think a lot about the publishing industry, what is to be done, how it's broken, how we can fix it, the various big five or big four mergers, and sort of the way that the middle has been cut out of publishing. So you have the big conglomerates at the top, and then you have self-publishers all trying to, out compete each other on Amazon. And so, how people in food service are always having these fantasies that they're going to start their own restaurant. And, if you've ever worked in food service, you know what a bad idea that is. So people who've never worked in publishing are always fantasizing about starting their own press. So I did work in publishing actually for about 7 years, which means that I know better. So I know that the best way to make a little money in publishing is to put a lot of money into publishing.
Yeah. And to publish stuff that is not the stuff that made you want to go into publishing. Like if you want to make money, you've got to go, okay, well, I'm going to sacrifice all of my interest in this actual subject and, I say this as somebody who regularly loses money as a small publisher. Like we'll have years where we make money and years where we lose money because we publish stuff we love rather than, here's the thing that will, make the most quick cash. Yeah, it's a really tough industry.
It is. And I mean, the things that I've noticed tend to do the best are, you have a weird medical condition and you've made a cookbook that has recipes that will work for that weird medical condition.
Right.
It's never the glamorous stuff. It's never the highly experimental genre shifting novel. It's just that pragmatic thing that a couple people are going to buy, but they really, really need. Yeah. And I just think about how big box bookstores and Amazon have just absolutely destroyed publishing. And then, you have these venture capitalists who are just trying to extract as much profit as they can from the big four. And then they're just going to sell those companies for parts. And I think we really need to reinvent publishing as an industry that puts out books. So right now, people talk about putting out content and putting out swag. And if, in Canada, our big book chain is Chapters Indigo. And if you go in there, it's mostly reading socks and candles and blankets.
Yep. Yeah. When I go out and, we have a booth and we'll go to, all these various conferences and stuff. And my wife convinced me that we needed to have merchandise. And at first I was really, really resistant because I was like, we'll become a merch store rather than a bookstore. And she was like, this funds the books. And she's absolutely right. Like the merch makes the profit margin on the merch is so much higher than the books. And it does attract people to the books, but there is that constant danger that eventually you just become a merch store. And that's not what I spend my time on outside of these conferences. I'm working on, working with authors on their books because that's why we exist, not merch. But it is, I can totally see why, those stores become they're just merchandise stores, which is, it's sad. It is sad for the industry. Bookstores are another place where people who've never owned a bookstore think this is fun. I will start a bookstore. Yeah, it's brutal.
You're just going to be sitting behind the desk, like in black books. And if somebody comes in to buy a book, you can yell at them and, you know,
It'll be all fun. No, it's
great.
really, really tough industry to succeed in. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so what do you think? I mean, I was talking to an author who had a very hopeful, kind of optimistic take on the direction of publishing. His hope was that AI was going to kill publishing that wasn't directly attached to like live readings. That in order for people to go, I believe this is written by a person, I will go to a live event and hang out, and that there was going to be this movement against, oh yeah, I purchased this book from a faceless entity. For all I know, it could be AI until I've seen that person, and that could shift the industry, which I thought was an interesting, hopeful take, that maybe we'll need to be out there to show that we really are human beings.
That is, and I mean, as somebody who absolutely loves doing live readings and events, I'm in favor of that. I mean, I think about the successful companies and writers that I've seen, and I have a very hopeful story. One of my clients had started out as a tiny poetry press, and now they have multiple imprints and they're winning awards, and they're quite well known, kind of mid-level press, and they were able to kind of come up through that gap.
Yeah.
I think there is a real need for that. And, I think definitely AI, the bubble's going to burst.
Yeah.
People don't want that. People don't want to read it. And people are going to be looking for something that's not that. I'm already seeing that in cover design, where I get a lot of work by promising to never use AI ever.
Yeah.
To the point of, like, a lot of the time I do my own photo shoots with covers, just so that I can show I know exactly where this, ethically sourced photo came
Yeah.
from. So I think there's a lot of room for that. I'm part of a writing collective called Night Beats, and it started out as kind of an inside joke where we all put this fake TV show in our books.
Nice.
What came out of it is that we have this group of authors, some of them self-published, some of them small press, and we're able to, we put out a book under our own imprint, which is what the Sad Bastard cookbook was. But we're also able to cross promote each other.
Yeah.
So that way we're not, those of us who are doing the small press thing, or those of us who are doing the self-pub thing, we're not just kind of individuals trying to hustle. Like, if you like this book, you might like this other book. And I think kind of collective groups like that are where a lot of the future is.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the heart of our business model, is bring together good people to support one another, because a lot of the authors I work with, they could self-publish and they could put out a single title, and then you have one product. Hey, please buy, and somebody comes along and says, I loved your book, and you say, great, that's all I've got to sell you. And so being able to work together to promote one another is really, not only is it the key to our success, but also it is a great building community is a valuable kind of ethic in and of itself. Like, this is something we are trying to encourage in other areas too. Building community is worthwhile. It's worth our time. So, but yeah, so I like that theory. I hope you are right, that building communities is going to be what saves publishing, because yeah,
because there's no money in it. But there's a drive. I mean, no matter what, you have a drive to tell stories. And right now there's a lot of technology that's sort of standing in the way between the storyteller and the reader.
Yeah.
And
and folks should know that it's not that there's no money in it as an industry. There's a lot of demand for stories. It's that there's a supply problem. There are too many of us who would give away our work for free. And so it drives down, not the quality. There's excellent stuff being produced by indie authors all the time, and they're so desperate to get it out there in the world that, if there were 3 storytellers, those folks would be, commanding an enormous market. There are lots of readers. There are just a lot of writers. That's the challenge. So what's something that you want listeners to know about right now?
Okay, so I promised that I wouldn't get too controversial because we're on YouTube and I'm guessing that you don't want to get demonetized.
Oh, go ahead, fire away.
But if in the year of our Lord 2024, I was asked about news and I didn't mention Gaza at all, I would kind of hate myself a little. So I would like fellow writers to know about some of the ways that they can help. So there's an organization called Writers Against the War on Gaza, which has a petition. It's got some kind of suggested activities. I'm sure there's more coming from that. So they have a website. If you Google that, you can check that out. If that kind of thing is not your cup of tea, I would say, check out organizations like Doctors Without Border or World Central Kitchen, because they're very politically neutral, but they're still the people who are out there risking their lives to mitigate humanitarian crises all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I had not heard about Writers Against the War on Gaza, so I will absolutely look them up and put a link in the show notes. The thing I love about Doctors Without Borders, and this is something that I think folks need to be more aware of, is they are this fantastic organization because instead of saying, here is a particular crisis, give us money for this crisis, and then, for example, the Red Cross, after the earthquakes in Haiti, said, please give us all this money for dealing with Haiti. Well, they're not fast. And so by the time they were on the ground there and trying to help, the money was not well spent. Doctors Without Borders is an organization that you can give to, and when the next crisis hits, these volunteer doctors, in many cases, swoop in using those resources from the previous crisis, and it allows them to be a lot more nimble and a lot more effective and save a lot of lives. So they're a great group to give to because you don't have to worry, oh, this is going to waste, or oh, this, Doctors Without Borders is really, really well run in that way. And I've heard good things about World Central Kitchen as well. So we'll link to both those.
Similar kind of thing, and they're operating everywhere that there is need.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, what is going on in Gaza can be so overwhelming because we don't feel like there's anything we can do, and so if folks are feeling overwhelmed, supporting organizations like Doctors Without Borders is a way to go. I did something, and maybe that's all we can do in some cases. But speak out and recognize the absolute humanitarian crisis that is going on, and then do what you can. Totally changing topics to something far lighter. So I often ask authors, if you had an idea for a poll, what would be a question you would want asked to the world?
Okay, so this is one that I used to give to my students when I didn't particularly feel like teaching a 75-minute long class, and I decided I would get them arguing amongst themselves instead. And that is very simply curry chicken versus chicken curry.
So explain to folks how this generates a giant discussion.
Well, I don't really understand because personally I'm vegan, so I don't eat either. But if you get a group of 35 ninth graders from diverse cultural backgrounds and ask them this question, they will actually form themselves into teams.
Wow.
Either side, and yell at each other, both insisting that their way is the only way.
Okay, what I need to do is get actual samples in the room for my students who would go, I don't know, and and then start that battle. But I think it sounds like a worthwhile endeavor.
It is.
So this is not just a linguistic distinction of which is the adjective, which is the noun. Like these are distinct dishes.
Well, that's the thing. My students would tend to start out thinking that it was a linguistic distinction. And then I would make them back up their position with evidence. And it would come out that, yeah, these are totally two different dishes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. See, I am. And so which means there's probably one of them I've never had. So I need to find out which have I never had. I think most of the time I've ordered it, now I'm second guessing myself. Have I always ordered chicken curry or curry chicken? No, I think it is chicken curry is the one I think I'm used to. Maybe. That's excellent. Okay,
That's
good.
quite the debate.
Yes, yes. Well, that one yeah, I think I need more information there before I could participate in that in an intelligent way. But yeah, it's I'll be doing some research. That's great. So what is on your TBR pile right now? What are you looking forward to reading next?
I have a massive TBR pile. I have a physical TBR pile, and then I have a virtual
Hmm.
TBR pile because mostly I read ebooks. But the one that I am most looking forward to is Rake's Fall by Vajra Chandrasekhara. So this is his second book. His first one was The Saint of Bright Doors, which won pretty much every award that it was eligible for and absolutely deserved it. And I devoured it in a couple days, and then I drove everybody in my life absolutely insane. I'm like, you need to read this. I don't care what you're reading. Stop what you're reading. Read this
Yeah.
instead. And I'm still kind of really annoying about it.
That,
So
that was me with R.F. Kuang's Babel. I was just
yeah,
pushing it into everybody's hands. Yes. Okay. Rick's Fall. Yes. What's it about?
I have no idea. My from the description, it's something about the Sri Lankan Civil War. There's demons, there's reincarnation. The cover is really pretty. It's a lot better than what they did for the last book. It's a standalone. It's has nothing to do with his first book. But yeah, no, it's one of those ones that there was a countdown on his website to when it was going to be released, and on release day, I slammed the buy button.
Yes.
Yeah. No,
I
I just felt when I read Saint of Bright Doors, just that feeling that you have when an author has written a book just for you.
yeah.
And
What's that
it's
one about? I have not read that one either.
that is also about the Sri Lankan Civil War in a way. So it's about a boy whose father is this cult leader. He was kind of taken over a country. And the boy is being raised with one goal in mind, which is to assassinate his father when he gets old enough to do that. He also has no shadow and he can float around. And if he's not concentrating, he kind of like floats off the ground. And so he grows up knowing that this is his destiny, this is what he's supposed to do. And then he moves to the city and realizes that he doesn't want to do that. So he joins this self-help group for chosen ones who haven't quite fulfilled their destiny. And
That's
he
brilliant.
yeah, he starts dating. He kind of like takes a job at a university to study the Bright Doors, which is where the title comes from, and just kind of tries to live a normal life until the guy that he's seen texts him this invite for, his father is going to be coming to the city, and then he has to sort of decide what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Um, and it is like it's really weird magic realism, very funny, and very kind of layered in terms of the meaning. So I got a lot of the references because I used to work in a school with a large Tamil population, so I knew that it was
Yeah.
referring to the Civil War, but a lot had to do with the story of the son of the Buddha, which I knew nothing about. I was absolutely able to enjoy the story without knowing kind of that history. But then I immediately wanted to read it again, having learned a little bit more about that.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Okay, well, I will so we'll put links to both because I want to check out Saint of Bright Doors now. So that's that sounds really good. I just finished one I'm gonna recommend to you because I think you would appreciate this one. Have you read The Marrow Thieves by Sherry Demoline?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
Just finished it.
I push that one on my students all the time.
Yes, yes. And we're thinking it was on a list for potentially reading it in my class next year. And I read it and thought, oh, the discussions we will have about this will be fantastic. So that's one I'm going to hope to teach next year. But folks who have not read it, it is a book about a dystopian future where white people lose the ability to dream and discover that by stealing the marrow from indigenous folks, they can dream again. And the author does a fantastic job of focusing on the native characters. In fact, I don't think there are any white characters in the whole thing. And that'll be really cool to have a discussion about with my kids too. Why is it that this book focuses on the people who are suffering and running and fleeing and maintaining themselves and surviving, rather than, I think the classic impulse to show both. No, the oppressors are not the focus, which is wonderful. So yeah, it's really good.
There's a sequel as well.
Oh, is there?
Yes, it's called Hunting by Stars. And it sort of continues the story of the group. And then you see a little bit of what is going on with white society as well, which is, absolutely dystopian and awful. But,
a world without dreams. Yeah. Okay. So I will now I will add that to my list as well.
Yes.
And I have to, I feel obligated to read that so that I can say to my students, there's a sequel. It's really good. Yeah, you understand that. You've been there. So one of the things that I have been struggling with is I watching what's going on in terms of social media, people trying to promote themselves as authors, and there's this temptation, there's this impulse to kind of be awful for attention. Like if you just say something incredibly hateful and hurtful, then you get a lot of attention. And so as a pushback to that, what is your hot take that's not awful?
Okay, my hot take is that it is actually possible and necessary to rebuild the internet so that it doesn't suck anymore.
And do you have specific ideas, or is it about changing the way we interact with it? What do you what do you hope for there?
Well, me as a person who almost flunked out of math, I am pretty useless here, but I think, and I could be wrong, that we don't actually have to drain a small lake so that a guy can type words into a plagiarism machine and come up with content that nobody likes and nobody wants to see. There's no reason why as a culture we have to say that that's okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've been fascinated by recently is this whole wave of 90s nostalgia. And it's kind of like this aesthetic, but it's also, I've encountered this idea that we could actually exist sustainably with the type of renewables that we have if we had a 90s level of power consumption. And as somebody who lived through that era and didn't particularly like living through that era, of course, I started out being baffled by this. Why? The clothes were bad. The music wasn't as good as the decade before. And I think what people are nostalgic for, besides the fact that they were, 30 years younger than we are now, is this world that felt smaller and slower and less like it was kiltering out of control. And I think that nostalgia can be a really negative thing, but this impulse where we analyze, what do we have now that we really need to keep? What do we love? And where did we lose the plot and maybe need to talk about jettisoning? And I think with the internet, it was this attention-based algorithm. As soon as we had perpetual scrolling, different posts being promoted as opposed to just reading things in chronological order, that's where it starts to go downhill. And I think what we're seeing now is it's falling apart. Nobody likes it. Google's broken. Facebook is broken. Twitter is a Nazi bar.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of splintering off into their own little social media bubble. And it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
But at some point in our history, we had GeoCities web rings, and that's the thing that we can do again.
Yeah. I mean, some of the Tumblr communities still function very much in that way, where it's, these are people that I've interacted with before, and I am, searching the internet via humans who are saying, hey, here's something worth checking out because I know you are in this particular fandom that I'm in. Here's something cool. And I think the more I watch Google just consume itself, the more I think this is going to lead people to say, I'm not going to search, I'm going to go to my community and say to my community, what should I be looking for? Because none of this is trustworthy and it's all algorithmic and awful. It is becoming less and less reliable as it gets theoretically smarter. Yeah, I hope that it will lead to that kind of a more intimate internet where people are saying, I just, and maybe Discord is some of that too. This is a community where we're talking rather than, because Discord does not take the amount of resources that it takes to run a Google search now.
No, and I mean, Discord reminds me a lot of old Usenet,
Yeah.
where you've got all of these different niche communities and niche channels, and you know the people that you're talking to, and then those people are going to introduce you to other people that you might like.
Yeah.
Uh,
And maybe, some of what we need is a kind of shift in terms of our own perception of our desire to engage online. So that instead of saying, oh, this comment that I wanted to make was seen by the following number of people. Oh, this comment went to 2 people that I like and know and care about and meant something significant to them, rather than 8,000 views that have no meaning. I don't even know that those views mean anything. Somebody's eye scrolled past them, but changing our own perception about what is, successful interaction on the internet.
yeah, yeah. Like I made 3 people absolutely crack up.
Yeah.
It's worth more than 10K people hitting the like button.
Right. Yeah, because I don't even know that is real. Like, and I think that
Probably bots.
yeah. So that does make me hopeful. I like that, thinking that it's a good reminder to that it is doable. Like, this is not impossible to create an internet that is, but I think it's less about the coding. I think it's more about our behavior. We could change that by demanding something better through our actions. So that's I need to think more about that, but I like that idea. How can we demand a better internet that actually functions for us? So Rachel, where can folks find your work online?
Okay, so I have a bunch of contacts. My website is rachelrosen.ca. The website for the writing collective that I mentioned before is nightbeatseu.ca. That's extended universe, not European Union.
Yeah.
People are confused. I'm like, why EU.ca? So that's what that is. My podcast is wizardsandspaceships.ca. Or you can just go into whatever your podcast app of choice is and search up Wizards and Spaceships and find the little purple guy.
Yeah.
On Instagram and Threads, I'm Rachel Ash Rosen. On Bluesky, I'm darkerthanvanta. And on Mastodon, I'm youseeatortoise at wandering.shop.
Ah, okay. Very cool. Well, and I will put links to all of these in the show notes. So folks who are going, oh, I'm also on Mastodon, boom, somebody there. Go.
Yeah.
Mastodon
Mastodon is great. That's another example of kind of the old internet reasserting itself.
Yeah. I'm on Mastodon and Hive, and very limited interactions, but they're healthier because they are limited in that way. So, which doesn't mean that Mastodon and Hive need to stay limited. I just think right now they're at that place where there is kind of that healthier level of interaction.
Yeah.
So who do you recommend I should have on the show?
Okay, so I'm going to recommend another Rachel. There's a lot of us in writing. I don't know why. So this one is Rachel Corsini. So she is the author of a book called Sushi and Sea Lions. And I am not a romance person. And in particular, I am not a contemporary romance person. It's just not my cup of tea. But this one so completely won me over. It's so adorable. It's hilarious. It's really off formula, I think. It's quirky. And like me, she's a high school teacher. She's also a cat lover, and she's a dancer, and she's just an absolutely hilarious person. So I think that you and your listeners/viewers will love her and her book.
Well, yeah, and the book sounds great too. Sushi and Sea Lions. Yes, I'll have to check that out. Okay, so well, there's some folks I need to thank before we get to our advice for everybody for the week. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3Ds. And thanks to Halizna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email me about that. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. Thank you, Doug. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com and check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it, and please check out Rachel's Crusade and get that read so that you're ready for Blight, which will be the next one, and tell a friend about it. Click that 5th star, make Rachel's day. It really does make a big difference for authors. And then similarly for this show, click on that thumbs up, an odd number of times. That would be very helpful. So Rachel, as folks are going into their week, what is your advice about something that they should remember this next week?
Be gay, do crimes.
Excellent. Yes, completely agree. And I always say a book without spaces would be gibberish, and our lives need spaces too. So don't ignore the spaces. And third, no matter how much you procrastinate, Rachel and I are still proud of you.
If I take my time, I make up my